And then let's do it. Okay. It's 1 o'clock and I'll call today's meeting to order. The town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. We have an agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any additions to this agenda? No. And I'd like to point out also that Councillor Brandy Brown is not here today. So just a motion to accept the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Phillips.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? Carried. We'll move on to 4.1. We have a delegation today. The Mel Society. So we have Mrs. Kathy Snyder and Mrs. Shirley Bagu. So come on up if you would, and I'll ask that you have a chair right up here and you have mics right in front of you. I'll turn mine off, and then when you are speaking, if you could just speak right into that mic, and it helps with our live stream. Thank you. So welcome, and thank you for taking the time to come in and present to us. And I will now turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing us to come over. We felt that it was time that we introduced ourselves as a not-for-profit in Rocky. Tomorrow is our 5th anniversary of being open in Rocky, and I'm not sure, I hope you haven't had to use our facilities, but if you have, I hope you found them easy to access. We're not a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to promote mobility, independence, increased self-worth, and overall an increased quality of life for individuals and families. We do this through our medical equipment lending program. As I mentioned, we opened October 6th, 2016, in response to a policy change that Alberta Health Services implemented regarding the loaning of medical equipment through the home care program. Alberta Health Services declared that existing equipment within the hospital loan pool, which we had at the Rocky Hospital in the basement, would have to be eliminated and donated to the lending cupboard in Red Deer. At that time, we had an occupational therapist, Melanie, who would use that equipment and did not want to handicap her patients worse by sending them all to Red Deer. So she took it upon herself to set this up. And at the moment we have, how many volunteers, Kathy?
Right around 20.
20 volunteers. Most of them are hospital employees, ex-retired, and they work together as a great team. And we continue to offer this service in Rocky Mountain House. You received in your package, I believe, some pictures, report. What you may not know is the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association identified medical equipment lending programs as a needed service for Albertans, and that a funding stream specifically aimed at supporting local lending initiatives needs to be created. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and so we are becoming very good at grant writing, and at the moment we're operating on SIP, I hate Community Initiatives Program Operating Grant. We received that back in December 2018, and Kathy, through good budgeting, has managed that we're still working on that. We still have a little bit left. We can keep our doors open very likely until the end of next year, at which point, unless we find another grant such as this one, we would have to close and send our equipment into Red Deer or Edmonton. Kathy does send surplus off to other overseas even, but We feel it's a really good service. I know I personally have used the service 2 times. My husband has, not me. But it's really nice to be able to come here and just pick up what you need and return it when you're done. The surgeries we've experienced have been out of Calgary, and there you have to purchase everything unless you go to the Red Cross, and they don't always have what you need when you need it. Now, the last 2 years with COVID, we have not seen a need for our services. We still have given out some, but nothing like it was prior to COVID. We foresee that to continue. And that's why we're here today, is to answer any questions you might have about our request for funding from the town.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll open the floor to questions now. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Fraser?
So is this an application for the town's large grant, or is this a separate request?
You might have to inform me as to the difference.
This is a request to have continual funding, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so my question is, what would the ask be?
Well, I believe in your package, we've mentioned that the county has decided to give us $10,000 a year, and for which we're grateful. That is what, 4 months worth of keeping us open. Our landlord is great. He has allowed us rent-free a couple of times because we just couldn't meet the rent. So he's wonderful, but that he can't do that forever. So the $10,000 from the county is very helpful. And if the town could see their way through to that, that would help us a lot to keep open.
Okay. So are there any services provided by AHS at all? No, nothing at all, like for any kind of equipment?
AHS does support the lending cupboard. I'll get Kathy to speak to that because she's actually talked to the lady about that.
So that's just in Red Deer though, as you said
Correct.
earlier. For some reason, I thought the last time we had a presentation, it was still identified that there was still some equipment available here. But no, that's
Through
not true.
AHS, there is not.
Okay.
No, it's all, it was all transferred to the Mel Society
Okay.
5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And the Mel Society, or the lending cupboard, I think has been in business probably at least double, if not triple, our 5-year anniversary. And they do have an arrangement with Alberta Health Services, and we do not seem to have been able to access that up to now. We did meet with Jason Nixon, and his advice was to approach our local municipalities first and then see what we could garner that way. And then, of course, we do many grant writing, as much grant writing as comes across the desk, but very often those grants are specific for a project. We already have our project. Everything we have is donated, and our volunteer base covers everything from front office to inventory control to maintenance. And so our ask is basically for operations, because we're no good without a roof over our head and the utilities paid. So that's where we're running into a bit of a stumbling block, is that the grants that come across are very often want you to buy 10 wheelchairs or something like that. And we use that when we can. For instance, Repsol gave us money and we were able to install an automatic door, which makes egress much easier. So as we see the need, we certainly don't let those pass us by, but really our greatest need is operational funding. And that's where CIP comes in.
Okay.
But you do have to take a year off, as we had funds through CIP for 2 years. And then they stipulate that you can't apply for more CIP until a year is up.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Phillips?
So another classic example of the province and AHS downloading responsibilities onto the municipalities that have never been budgeted for before. My question is, the $10,000 county grant, was that a one-time grant or is that an ongoing?
We are in year 3 of
Okay.
receiving that. Yeah, we're very grateful for that.
And one thing I didn't mention, sorry, Madam Chair, but we feel we meet your own goals by reusing, recycling, very much so. We have purchased wheelchairs from the government surplus when ours have, well, the tires are falling off them. So we have purchased from the government surplus in Calgary, literally brand new wheelchairs and brought them out here. And we also send anything we cannot use or use the parts of, we send them off to Edmonton and they're shipped to wherever it's needed. So we are meeting one of this council's goals with our business.
Okay. Any other question? Councillor Fraser?
I guess my issue is not with the MEL Society, but again, is with a provincial government that is continually downloading expenses onto municipalities. And I think completely aside from the decision that we make here today, that we need to send a letter and advocate for universal healthcare to be universal. If you can't leave the hospital without a wheelchair and you can't get a wheelchair, that's not universal healthcare. So if this is a provincial responsibility and they're derelict.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
What we did with Mel was they did take care of it. They funded the lending cupboard. As in the central healthcare, I've been in healthcare for 50 years. And typically other regions, when they regionalized, delivered healthcare in different ways. Central Alberta centralized. So everything went to Red Deer and then we had to travel there. I've been in imaging, so I can speak to that more. We don't have a CT here. Calgary region has CT in most of their small communities. So it's just a different way of delivering healthcare. That's something I will approach with Mr. Nixon when I speak to him again, is that you can't always centralize everything. And we'll be pushing for that. But our coming to you today was to fulfill a requirement that he requested. He's not adverse to supporting us. He just needed us to make the steps, take all the steps.
So are there any other funding communities? Because I see that you do fund, there are other people that use the services. So I'm just kind of curious, is it just so far Clearwater County that is funding? Yeah.
If I could add as well, initially FCSS did some major funding for the MEL Society. And for whatever reason, their parameters for funding changed. And they were not able to contribute to the same effect that we had enjoyed at the beginning.
So is there a fee at the lending cupboard to use?
There is a fee for service. No one is denied equipment though, if they need it. We do have a fee waiver plan as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. I think it's a great service. Anybody else? Councillor Narang?
Just curious, because I know you had mentioned that the Red Cross offers a similar service locally, but obviously not
Not
as,
locally.
not locally.
No,
Okay, so, but they do offer the service and we can access it locally though.
no. You have to go to Calgary to get your equipment.
Oh, I see.
There's a
Okay.
Red Cross program. In fact, we heard that they were going to close that, but it's still operational because
Right.
Jim just had his second surgery in August
Mhm.
and we were told by this surgical team that we could go to the Red Cross to get it. So they, for some reason, are still open, but we had heard they were going to be closing that as well, which meant that our service would be more needed.
So I wonder if there's a partnership opportunity with Red Cross and that they might be able to assist in finding some funding opportunities that are more long-term. And I'm wondering about if you've reached out to the United Way at all as far as funding goes.
We are actually with Benevity.
Oh, yeah, same. Yep.
So we have an account there. We
Mhm.
just have to let when we write our letters, we let people know that they can donate through Benevity, and we get, I think we got a check a couple of months
And but
ago.
have you looked specifically at the United Way of Central Alberta? I think Brett Spade, he's the executive director over there, and they're always supporting initiatives too for long-term funding and short-term funding.
let
It might be
Kathy
something to
speak
look
to
into.
that.
We have had some United Way grant funds as well, yes. And if I just correct, I do believe that there is a Red Cross in Red Deer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for all that you are doing for the community. So,
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you. Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that. And we wish you luck in your election.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll move on to number 5. 5.1 is to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of September the 21st, 2021. Everybody's had a chance to look at those minutes. And anybody care to make a motion? Councillor Auld,
Motion to adopt. I'll make the motion to adopt the minutes from September 21st.
thank you. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So we'll move on to 6.1, the delegation business for the request for financial support. Any more conversation, Councillor Narang?
I don't think in the past they broke down the statistics as far as the area and the people that they're serving. So I like that they provided that information this year, because my question was always around sending community dollars to, and I think last year's example was Cochrane.
Mhm.
And so I just couldn't quite wrap my head around why, as our municipality, we would fund that. Their statistics show that they're largely being used in our community. So I guess that sort of eradicated my thoughts from the last time they've asked for funding. It's so frustrating that FCSS can't fund and that AHS isn't funding. And then I think about the increased potential for more surgeries locally. I only see the demand going up since, the most recent announcement. So I'm not sure that I have an answer. It's just sort of, those are just my thoughts initially that I hope would maybe get some conversation going about it. And I'm just wondering, maybe with our eco center or something, like if there's space, like we have buildings down there, like I like her connection of that whole, like focusing on our sustainability and environmentalism. So that is kind of an interesting spin on it. As far as there's something that we could do with relief that way. I don't know what we have for space down there or what they need. Is there buildings there that could be used for something like this?
Your worship, I don't think they're really looking for space. I did tour their facility a few weeks ago. It's a very nice facility. I think it's more of the operating funding that they're in need of.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of ways to boost sustainability so that they're not nickel and diming everything. Seems like they're really struggling for those types of things. Like if $10,000 makes that much of a difference to operations, that would be concerning for me as an organization. So that was just sort of a brainstorming thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Phillips?
And if memory serves, I know the Mel Society has presented to us before, and one of the reasons I believe why we hadn't funded them in the past was because of the FCSS funding. And now with the FCSS funding decreasing, and we hate to have this stuff put on the municipalities and further burden our taxpayers, the question becomes, is this something that is a necessity for the community? And obviously there's a need for it. There's people using this equipment all the time. And we don't want to have them have to go to Red Deer or Calgary to be able to get a wheelchair or a set of crutches or anything like that. But yeah, memory serves, we didn't in the past because of that. Now because their funding is decreasing, they're looking for ways of keeping themselves viable. And it's a conversation we need to have.
Councillor Auld?
I'm just curious if this is a decision that we have to wait until we do our planning. Fall.
Like a service level review, yeah, or move it to budget
Yeah,
discussions.
Because it's going to be a long term, it's a yearly ask they're looking for. So as much as I'd like to say yes right now, I think we need to have it added to the budget discussions.
I would agree. Would you care to make that motion?
Sure.
I would just make a motion that we bring this back to our service level review, budget review. And discuss it at that point.
And I just have one other comment. I think before that time, we could also help advocate for them. We could send a letter and advocate, do some advocating on behalf of the town and the citizens of our area. So would you need a separate motion for that, Mr. Cozell? Okay, so we'll deal with Mr. Councillor Alls. All in favor of Councillor Alls' motion? And that's carried. And, oh, Councillor Fraser?
Since I was the one who's all sparky, I will make the motion that we send a letter to provincial government outlining the needs of our community and the importance of having access to medical lending.
Okay, we're good with that motion? Everybody's clear? Okay, all in favor of that one, that motion? And that's carried. Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to 7.1 Municipal Environmental Award for our community. Who would like to talk on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. So as council is aware, a few months ago, the town applied for the AUMA Municipal Environmental Award. And we just received correspondence that says that we have actually won that award. So on behalf of myself, I'd like to thank council and all our staff because there was a lot of initiatives that were put forward to achieve this award and provide a lot of environmental programs in our community. So it'll be awarded to council at the AUMA conference in November.
It's awesome. Yeah, great work. Well done. There's been a lot of environmental initiatives happening here, so it's great to be recognized for that. It's another shining star for our community. So, so just looking for a motion to accept the letter as information. Councillor Narang.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. We've won a lot of awards in the past couple of years for like a lot of really cool things. So kudos to everybody. This is really, really exciting. But I would definitely make a motion to accept this for information.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So we'll move on to correspondence for action. 9.1, we have Parkland Regional Library System proposed budget for 2022. I'll turn that over to Dean.
Yeah, thank you,
Mr.
Your
Kraus.
Worship. So that time of year where other organizations that we support and submit their budgets to council for consideration. So Parkland's Regional Library System has done that. I think the key point here in their budget, it's the same cost per capita as it was last year. So they're holding their line for us. So
Good. Councillor Phillips.
I sit on the Parkland Regional Library Executive Committee, and it was a lot of work to get the budget to a 0% increase. They realized that municipalities are struggling with funding themselves, so it was nice to see that we were able to get this at a 0% increase.
That's great. So we're just. Do we have to approve this then, or just send it to budget discussion? Sorry, I'm looking for an action item here.
Your Worship, yes, so that council sent it to for budget discussions.
Okay,
Be part of that.
Councillor Phillips.
I will make a motion that we send the Parkland Regional Library proposed budget to our budget discussions.
Great, thank you. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. We'll move on to 9.2, Fortis, Alberta, the municipal franchise fee riders.
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. So as council addressed the ATCO gas franchise fees at last council meeting or a couple of council meetings ago, Fortis has submitted their documents to us for consideration if council wants to adjust the the Fortis franchise fees.
My personal preference is to keep this Fortis franchise fee the same. Do we know when we last raised that? Because what's in there, 17? Yeah, so. Councillor Auld?
Yeah, I would agree. I'd like to leave it the same. All it does is just puts the onus back onto the residents and just another increase. So if we can keep it the same, that's what I would like to do.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Councillor Narang?
Yeah, I just have a question looking at this list. Like, how do some communities keep it at like 0 and 2? Like, how does that even work? Or is it just unreported?
Your worship, no, it's up to each municipality and it varies. You'll find probably the smaller villages and so forth will keep it very low because, I mean, it doesn't generate a lot of money for them anyway, because it's because they're a small municipality. But you'll notice if you go through there, the larger ones probably have a higher percentage. And those larger municipalities with the higher percentage also have a lot more tax exempt properties. They're the ones with the hospitals and the schools, which they would actually collect from because they pay the franchise fees.
Oh, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Councillor Phillips?
And just looking at the percentages of the larger communities, we're on the lower end of the spectrum from a larger community point of view. So it's nice to see that and that it hasn't changed since 2017.
Okay. What would council like to do?
Do I just
Councillor Narang?
need a motion to accept as information or to hold the line with the franchise fees at 12%? That's my, yeah, I'm just, sorry. Do you need a motion with a number in it or just,
Your worship, either one would work.
okay, so I make a motion that we just keep the franchise fees as they are.
Okay, thank you. Everybody clear on that motion? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you.
Everyone clear with the motioner?
We'll move on to 9.3, rural safety, smart choices for life. Who is Mr. Crouse?
So your worship, this is a request to advertise in their publication for the Rocky 4-H Club. We have done this in our previous years, so we just want confirmation from council that we still want to advertise. And I think last year is the $315.
Yeah, there it is. 350.
Protecting 20 kids.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Auld?
I'm not sure if you guys have actually gone through this book, but it's a great little safety smart book for the kids. I've always supported it through the shop. I think it's cheap advertising and it's actually useful. I think it's a great idea to keep doing it.
Where do they get the books? Are they delivered to schools or am I missing that in here?
Everybody that donates to them, they can distribute books. Like I can have 20 in at the shop and distribute them, or they come to the office, or they get it at the
Okay.
post office. But it does go to the schools.
Okay. Do we have we in the past had this here? Do we know?
Your worship, I don't think we've actually had the book in the town office to distribute, but we can
Yeah, I think,
inquire about that for this year.
sure. I think that would be great to have it.
Trade shows too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Auld?
There's no more discussion. I would like to make the motion that we support Rocky South 4-H Club in their smart choices for life book advertising.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Okay, so moving on to 9.4, request for support letter. I think I need a little bit more information on this. Do we know what we're,
Your worship, actually, no, we're not clear of what we're supporting in the grant application. This email is all they submitted to us.
right?
We did provide a letter of support for this organization in 2019. for an initiative that would have benefited Rocky and in crime prevention, but for this specific application, I'm not too sure. We
You know,
haven't heard back. I don't think, for
I'm
further
just-
information.
Okay, I just would not want to duplicate a service that's already been provided, so I would be happy to entertain it, but I'd like to know more information. So, Councillor Fraser?
I agree. I think obviously crime prevention is a good thing, but we know nothing about the program or the initiative that they're applying for the grant for. So I don't even think we have the information to write a support letter if we don't have that info. So I would need more information about what the program is, why they're applying, make sure that we aren't supporting something similar here already.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Phillips?
I was just going to echo the exact same sentiments. I'm not 100% sure what we're asking to support. I mean, crime prevention is obviously a very important thing and a very something that we do want to promote. However, I'm just not sure exactly what we're asking for support for. So I would like some clarification as well.
So can we reach out to this organization and just get some more information?
Yes, Your Worship. So
Okay, so just Mr. Ament?
Sorry, just noticing on the application, the deadline is tomorrow.
Yeah.
it was a late request, Your Worship. So
I'd still like to hear more about what program she is looking to promote. And
I wouldn't even know what to put in the letter. So I'm trying to put one together myself to support the organization under my other hat, and I'm struggling, so I don't know either.
okay. So just a motion to accept this as information, please. Councillor Fraser,
I'll make that motion.
thank you. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to number 10, 10.1 to 10.9. Just looking for a motion to accept as correspondence for information. Councillor Phillips,
I will make that motion.
all in favor of that motion? Carried. Moving on to number 11, my report. Does anybody have any questions for me? No? Okay, so just looking for a motion, please, to accept my report as written. Councillor Ald. Thank you. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. 11.2, does anybody have any questions for any of the written council reports? No? Okay, I'll make that motion to accept the councillor reports as written. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to 12.1, the action list. Anybody have any questions regarding that? Okay. Councillor Fraser?
Do we have an update on the municipal COVID voting? I know that I asked and there was discussion about there possibly being a drive-through. I've had people ask about the advanced vote, and so.
Your Worship, so in regards to the drive-through, I mean, administration looked at it and it's just not logistically possible for us, just with the timing, and we would need additional staff and weather. So that won't be available for this election.
Okay, any other questions on the action report? Okay, just looking for a motion to accept. Councillor Phillips?
I'll make a motion to accept the action list for October 5th.
Perfect. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Number 13, does anybody have any administrative inquiries? Okay, seeing none. Does anybody have any notices of motion? Seeing none. It is 1:34. I will call for a 5-minute recess, and then when we come back, we have a short closed session.